Hello and welcome back to Future You, the podcast brought to you by graduate careers experts Prospects. I'm your host, Emily Slade, and in this episode I chat to Lieutenant Sophie Farrelly RLC, a troop commander for the British Army, about her career path using their scholarship and bursary scheme.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm 24 and I'm in the British Army. I'm an officer and I'm currently in the role of a troop commander. And I've been in since September 2022.
Amazing. Let's go right back to the beginning. What was your educational journey?
So finished my GCSEs and I went to sixth form to do my A-levels. So I did biology, chemistry and English literature, all quite broad subjects because I didn't really know what route I wanted to take. So I just thought I'd keep my options open going forwards. But when I was at sixth form, my mum, who was in the military previously, she stated that there's this kind of sixth form scholarship that the Army does, and that if you pass it, you get a bit of funding, and it's like a gateway into the Army. But if you don't want to go forwards with that career, you can also say no. But what she did say is if you pass the selection board, it looks quite favourable for your CV going to university. So I was like, okay, give that a try. Gave it a shot. Didn't know how it would go. And I passed it and was awarded the scholarship too, which I was really grateful for. And from there, because I wasn't really sure if an army career is what I wanted, it was just something that my mum had done, she'd suggested. I still didn't know what route I wanted to take, but I did know that I wanted to go something people-focused and people-centred. So it did kind of match the criteria I was looking for. And being honest, at the time, I didn't really know what else I wanted to do. Plus, I'd just been awarded this scholarship. I thought, well, actually, perhaps the Army's seen something in myself that maybe I hadn't seen before. It started with a scholarship, which I then extended to a bursary at university. I did my A-levels, I then went to university. It was University of East Anglia in Norwich. So it was a little bit further from home because Surrey's home for me. But it's really good for the sciences, and I did biomedicine. Loved the degree. It was 3 years long, learned all about the body, maybe a bit too much about the body. And yeah, whilst I was at university, I did something called University Officer Training Corps. So this was part of my contract with my scholarship, that it was, essentially something that I had to do on the side. But it was so much fun, and I found that it cemented that actually this career path is what I'd like to do. So to give a summary of the University Officer Training Corps, or OTC for short, they've got a few scattered around the country, and my closest one was Cambridge. So I went there from Norwich with some of the Cambridge students, which was really good to meet new people and network in that sense. Essentially, you're just thrown into a pool with loads of like-minded individuals who are interested in similar things. So they're scattered around the country. Cambridge was the closest for me. And essentially, they put on things like, obviously, military skills and teaching you the basics there. And you get to go down to the ranges and fire a weapon for the first time, or learn drill, all of these kind of stereotypical army things. Also, they also had like sports, adventurous training opportunities. But essentially, it was just like a really nice way to kind of get away from university and do something on the side. And it was paid as well. So as a uni student, it was nice to have an extra source of income, but doing something that I actually really enjoyed and with people that I liked. So that's what I did for the 3 years alongside my degree. And then straight after graduating, I joined the Army. So went straight into the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, RMAS for short, or Sandhurst for short. That was essentially a training year. I graduated in the summer of 22. I then started training September 2022, and then I finished my training August 2023.
Amazing. So was that the point where you could have opted out once you'd finished your degree? If you didn't then want to progress into the Army, could you have just been like, no, at that point?
Yeah, so there's always the option. So at that point, I'd taken the scholarship, which meant that I'd been given a little bit of money as support from the Army. But if I did change my mind, then absolutely I can back out of it, but I'd have to pay the money back. But when I was initially offered the money, obviously you don't have to say yes at that moment, you have a bit of time to think. And if you didn't want that, but you've still passed the main board, it's called, or Army Officer Selection Board, AOSB for short, you've got a couple of years after that if you don't want to join straight away, then you've got the opportunity to in a couple of years later if you wanted to. I don't know the time frame.
Yeah.
But I think it's about 5 or less years.
So You've kind of touched on it with your mum's background and obviously getting access to the scholarship, but what really cemented that opinion for you? What made you want to join the army?
Big question.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the official decision that I wanted to join wasn't something that happened over the space of a couple of days, couple of weeks. It was something that was spread over a decent amount of time. I'm speaking maybe like a year or two, in the sense that, yes, I was presented with that opportunity of a scholarship at the start, but like we discussed earlier, there's always that route to back out if you want to, even at university. So I think a mix of obviously my mum's background, she never pushed me in the direction, but hearing her stories and her friends' stories, going to University Officer Training Corps, that massively cemented it. But I don't think there was any one specific thing that kind of confirmed it to me. It was just through research and those things I've already stated, it kind of came together, and there wasn't any negatives. I just couldn't find any negatives at the time. I really wanted to do something people focused and, without sounding cliche, with a kind of sense of purpose. And it absolutely ticked those boxes. So that's kind of what happened. I've run with it, and so far I've got no regrets. So.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about this bursary.
Of course. So the Army offers scholarships and bursaries. So to kind of split them down and summarise it, you've got the scholarships, which are open to sixth form students, and then you've got bursaries, which you can apply for at university. So in my case, before going into the specifics, I did the sixth form scholarship board and I was awarded a scholarship. But then I was given the opportunity to upgrade that to a bursary at university. So again, I'll go into the different types, but I was then, because of the scholarship board, automatically given a standard bursary. But from there, you could upgrade it further to one of the bigger bursaries if you wanted to, based on the criteria. So with scholarships and bursaries, they're slightly separate, as I iterated to earlier. And I've got some notes just so I'm up to date with like today's guidance on scholarships and bursaries from the Army website. So forgive me if I read my notes a little bit. But the Army Officers Scholarship Scheme or Scholarship Board that I did, the application criteria for that is you've got to be 16 or 17 years old, and you've got to apply by March of year 12, so lower sixth. If you're successful in that initial selection process there, you'll then be brought onto a bigger selection process, which is the Army Officer Selection Board, AOSB, which is exactly the same as someone who's 18 and above applying to the wider army would do, but instead of looking for more of a finished product, they're looking for more potential because you are that bit younger. So you go and do the Army Officers Scholarship Board in June or July, and if you're successful, you'll qualify for a commission within the Army. So essentially that means that if you do pass and you decide to take the scholarship, then you've got a guaranteed place after university in the Army, so guaranteed career, and it kind of gives you that sense of stability. But like we said earlier, if you don't want that, then that's also absolutely fine. So a bit of the kind of application criteria. In your GCSEs, you've got to get at least 40 ALICE points, including a pass in English language, maths, and either a science or a language. And then Scottish National qualifications, you need 34 ALICE points. But if we're looking at the financial side, if you are successful, you will receive £3,000 in year 13. So once you've done the selection process in year 12, you'll be awarded with £3,000 in upper sixth or year 13 at sixth form. This is then upgraded to a provisional £6,000 standard Army undergraduate bursary. And if that's for a 3-year course like mine, but if you do a 4-year course, that's £7,000. So you can see that the money there is pretty generous, especially for a university student, because money can be quite tight in university. So that's the standard scholarship. So with the scholarships and with the bursaries, there is this expectation that you do serve at least 4 years, including the training year at Sandhurst. But for the money that you're given and the opportunities that you're presented with, to me, I see that as quite a small turn of service. Once you're at university, whether you're on the standard bursary like I was or not, you can apply for a bursary. So this is essentially an upgrade from the scholarship, which is more sixth form level. This is now speaking to all university students. And I'll go into a couple of them if that works. There's different criteria for each, and as a result, different financial benefits. So there's a range of different bursaries that the Army has on offer. And I think a lot of people don't actually know about them. I met a couple of Army bursars through my kind of Army career so far. But again, some people didn't even realise that was a possibility. And in some ways feel like they are like left out in a sense. So I think it's good that people know about it. So you've got the standard bursary, like I've already mentioned. So even if you haven't done the scholarship initially at sixth form, that's something you can still apply for. And it's open to every single university student, no matter what your discipline is. And with a standard bursary, you can join any regiment or any part of the British Army once you've commissioned. So there's no restrictions there. Then we go on to the Army Undergraduate Enhanced Bursary. So this is another type of bursary you can apply for at university, but this one's open to the best performing candidates, it says on the Army website. So it's a little bit more competitive in that sense. And to apply for this bursary at A level, you need at least ABB or Scottish equivalent, and you need to be on track to get a 2-1 at university. And with this one, you could receive up to £24,000. Also, you can join any part of the army as an officer too. So a lot more generous and also not too restrictive in your army career as well. Then we go on to the Army Undergraduate STEM Bursary, which has now also got the name of Defence STEM Undergraduate Sponsorship Scheme, so the DSUS. This is the one I got graded myself to. It's changed a little bit since, but this is the one that when I went to university, because I did biomedicine, it was an Army endorsed STEM degree. So I applied for that and was very grateful to have been accepted for that. But essentially, this bursary is open to anyone wanting to join one of the STEM corps. And essentially, it means that you're a bit more limited in the branches you can choose within the army, but it's still quite a large list to choose from. And they're just a bit more STEM related, I guess, just with the skill set that you bring to the table. And like I said, you have to be studying an army endorsed STEM degree. With this one, you can receive up to £42,750 spread across your university years. It's a large amount for a lot of people, quite life-changing, especially as a university student. So the career options within the army as a STEM bursar, you can be an officer in one of the following branches. So you have the Royal Engineers, the Royal Signals, the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, the Royal Logistic Corps, RLC, so that's what I'm in, the Royal Artillery, the Adjutant General's Corps, Army Air Corps, and the Intelligence Corps. So you can see it's quite a large list there. It's restricted in a sense because there's so much you can do within the army, but there are still so many options. I think the army's recognising that they're wanting a lot more different skill sets, different angles, different minds, different things that people bring to the table. And then finally, we've got the Army Medical Services AMS bursary. This is available to potential medical, dental, veterinary and nursing professionally qualified officers. So professionally qualified officers is called PQOs for short, because it's quite a mouthful. And with these, you get differing amounts of money, and these are the more generous bursaries. So medicine and dental, you can get £75,000 from the army. Veterinary, you can get £60,000, and then nursing is £42,000. Again, all very life-changing amounts of money. And with these, you must serve 3 years after commissioning or finishing your training, because PQOs, their training course is not a year, it's a shortened course, which is why there's a slightly different return of service there. So yeah, you can see that there's a lot of different opportunities on offer from the army. And again, like I said earlier, not many people know about it, but that's just a general summary from myself. And if people did want to look into it, the army website's the best place to go, in my opinion, because that's where I got all this information from. And they have so much more information on there, not just about the bursaries, but generally about the career as well. So if people are interested, it's quite a good place to go.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's talk now about your specific role. Like, what is it that you do day to day? Like, what's a day in the life of your job?
Also, another good question, because it's so varied. What I've really enjoyed about the job is how diverse it is, and the range of opportunities you have, and the range of kind of challenges that you're faced with too. Like, I genuinely wouldn't be able to give you like a stock answer of what my day looks like. I can say what my like day in work would look like, for example, but again, this doesn't always happen. So let's say, so today's Tuesday. So if I was at work today, I would wake up and go to PT, so a bit of exercise as the regiment comes together, and then our smaller squadrons that we work in, like our smaller teams, we will then go off and do different PT sessions. So that will last for an hour in the morning, and then we'll head back into work for the rest of the morning, and then general work in the afternoon. But essentially, as a troop commander, like I said earlier, it's kind of like a managerial role in a sense. Essentially, you're just managing a team of soldiers. And depending on where you go, different branches, different corps, different regiments, you have a different size team. So down where I am, because the logistics is a bigger corps, the platoon or troop sizes, range from about 30 to 40 people that you're managing. But my friend who's gone to intelligence, for example, it's a team of 10. So it really depends. And as a result, you have different working relationships because you're working with people more closely or less closely. But no, it's been good.
Yeah. So you're in charge of like 30 to 40 people. Does that mean you're with them constantly and you all travel together? And what does that sort of look like? What does that relationship look like?
So yeah, so I've got my team, my troop, and I thought that I would, when I came into the job, see them a lot more, but it hasn't necessarily been the case. So I work at somewhere called 17 Port and Maritime Regiment, which is this kind of ensign here, and they are port operators in my troop, but then you've got mariners down there, you've got marine engineers, you've got VSS, which is vehicle support specialists. Everyone's so broad, and because they've got such a niche skill set that works down in that location, down in Marchwood, it means that they're constantly deployed. Obviously on rotations, we've also got to man our working port as well. So we're down near Southampton. People are always on the go. And I think that's why it's such an exciting place to work because, okay, you don't necessarily see all your team or your soldiers all the time, but you know what they're doing. There's obviously ways of tracking them and seeing what people are doing. People come back with really good stories and the opportunity to travel, both for the soldiers, but also on the officer side of things, the troop commander. They're so broad and so vast.
So where have you travelled?
So I've been quite lucky at my regiment. I'm really grateful for the opportunities they presented me with. So I joined my regiment January 2024, so last year, and I had my first deployment in March time, I believe, which was a port task group, or a PTG for short. And essentially, when you load up a vessel with kit and equipment, vehicles and the like, when you send it off to another country, you need to make sure you've got port operators to kind of take that all off again. So quite often we have these PTGs dotted across the world in quite cool locations. This time around was Estonia. So we went down there for a week, which was really, really good fun. And then I flew directly down to Poland. So there was a big exercise on at the time called Operation Linotyper. And you had lots of different elements of the army come together and essentially work on this big exercise. 17 Port Maritime's role was essentially to get people home. It was kind of the rounding off the operation essentially and making sure people get home, their kit gets home in the right place, right time. And there was a lot of kit and equipment, I can tell you that. So that was really good, especially because I was still so new in the job. You know, you're given quite a large amount of responsibility quite quickly, which is kind of nice. I quite like that they almost didn't throw you in the deep end. Like there's always that support network, but to kind of throw you straight in, straight away, you kind of just get to know everyone so much better as a result. So I'm really grateful for that. After that, in about May time, I went on something called Operation Underhill. This one was really exciting because the idea behind it, and it was meant to be a real-time operation. The main reason we were doing it is because we wanted to help the Americans who were creating the port at the time in Gaza. We wanted to go and help deliver that aid. So it was a humanitarian aid operation. So we were working as an attachment to the Royal Marines on something called like an RFA vessel, so the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. And we're working with them, essentially like creating this plan on how we would do that and how we would help the Americans deliver this aid. So super exciting to be kind of part of a real-time planning process with real-time consequences too if you did get things wrong. So we had things kind of planned and prepped, but sometimes these things fall through, and that is what happened here. So we did then get sent home, but to even just have like a snippet of that was so unique, and I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity. So those have kind of been my deployments. But then on the sports side, I've also been quite lucky because I joined the netball team. So you have regimental netball teams, which is like your unit. And then we're all part of the RLC, so the logistics corps. So they have a core team as well. So I was lucky enough to kind of join in with them. And they invited me down to Cape Town to do a netball tour for 2 weeks, which was incredible. It wasn't on my cards. I didn't expect that to be on my forecast events at all. But when the opportunity came up, you know, my chain of command was super supportive and were like, yeah, it's fine. And so I went along and did that, which was fab. And there's so many other opportunities that the Army has with sports adventurous training. Like I went to Norway and France in December and January time to do a ski season, which again, absolutely incredible. You can't believe that it's your job in a way. But that was new for me. I've done a bit of skiing before, but we were doing ski racing. So very different type of skiing, required a lot of courage, sending yourself down those slopes. But the opportunities have been so broad, and that's just like a couple of them. I know other people to have gone off to do things like sailing, rock climbing, mountain biking. I think a lot of the time as well, people don't realise that about the army. It's not all about work. Don't get me wrong, that is the main kind of emphasis in the deployments, especially at my regiment, because it is a working regiment. But there is always time for those other things, and it is still seen as something important because that's what builds a three-dimensional person, right?
So when you get deployed, do you have time for yourself? You have your work hours, but then are you able to explore where you've landed?
So I think it depends. It depends on what you're going out to do. So with the Port Task Group in Estonia, for example, we went out and there was work to do, but when you didn't have work to do, then yeah, you can have a little explore around the area. But when we were in Poland, for example, Operational Undertyper, that was a lot more exercise focused. You're in the mindset simulating that this is like the real thing. So it's not quite the same. So it's really situation dependent.
Brilliant. So you're traveling a lot, but you're also in base a lot. How often do you get leave and to visit family?
So it's more than you'd expect. And again, it really depends on obviously the current climate and what's going on within the regiment and the taskings coming through. But I think there's this kind of stigma around the army that you're always on the move, always, never at home. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that can be the case. And it's very dependent on where you go with your career. But it's not always the case. I very much think that is a myth that sometimes needs to be busted a little bit. Sometimes you've kind of got like a directed posting where you have to go based on certain circumstances. But a lot of the time, some deployments can be voluntary based, at least they are at my regiment. There always has to be the places filled, like bombs to seats. But there is that leeway there, and there is still kind of a huge push for things like G1, so your welfare. Don't get me wrong, mission comes first, but if there's a way that we can prioritise people's welfare and their own family situations, then absolutely we will.
Yeah, brilliant. Are there any other myths that you would like to bust?
I don't know, because there's so many different myths in different ways. It could be something as low level as the fitness standard. To me, the main myth that I think sometimes I have to even bust with my own friends is the general stereotype of British Army soldier, British Army officer. Like, who is it? What do you think of when you hear that? And I think when I've spoken to my friends quite a few times, they picture your infantry soldier who is out on the ground and they've got a weapon with a bayonet fixed, or, doing something super gnarly, which absolutely is the case. And there are people who do that, and we all have that basic training going through either Sandhurst or soldier training. But it's not always like that. People jump to it thinking that's what you're doing all the time, or you're always deployed and you're always away. But actually, there is so much more to the army. There's all these different roles. You can see that I mentioned there's these kind of more STEM focused backgrounds where essentially you're supporting that infantry soldier, right? So mission critical, absolutely, they need to get things done. But where would they do that without the sustainment from logistics? Where would they do that with the communications from the signals? Where would they do that with certain aspects from like the REME or the engineers? So I think people can be very, and again, when I say people, it's not everyone, but I'd say the average person can be very narrow minded, narrow focused on what the army is about, and not actually know about all these other kind of branches, but also sports opportunities and XYZ. It's not all just that one thing.
What kind of skills would you say you need for your role?
I think, again, it's super varied. It's dependent on the person. And I guess me saying this now, I mean, like the rest of this kind of podcast interview, it's all my opinion, right? But I think the skill sets you need to have, obviously there's an element of mental resilience, because you can get very busy very quickly, or the kind of, it doesn't happen as often, but like fitness wise, you need to make sure that you can push through those kind of barriers. But ultimately, it's just to make sure that when things do get stressful, fast paced, you can essentially lead a team. If you're not mentally resilient yourself, how can you expect others to be so too? So I think that's quite a big thing. And I think as a officer, communication is super key as well. I mean, it's key across the army, but I think a lot of the times I've seen it myself where things aren't communicated properly down or up the chain of command, and that's where things have gone wrong. So I think you've got to be confident in yourself in that way. And I haven't always been the most confident, and it's something I would still say, being honest, I struggle with to this day, kind of backing yourself up. But I would say going through the Sandhurst year of training absolutely helped, because you realise how much potential you have. But ultimately, for me personally, I would say the best thing you can have, or the best skill, is compassion. I think empathy and having that emotional intelligence is key in being able to run and work alongside a team, because if you can understand people's strengths and weaknesses, you can utilize them in better ways, or like we said with the deployments, you kind of know their situation better, and as a result you've got a better working team. As a result you have better results, and if you've got a team that works for you, it makes your life easier too. So always I would say compassion is key.
So what advice would you give for people looking to follow in your footsteps?
I think perseverance is a very big thing, especially in training, because I'd say that going through that training year, and I can't speak of how it is for soldiers going through, but on an army officer kind of perspective, that year at Sandhurst is created to challenge you, and it is not reflective of what the wider army looks like, because it's a lot more meticulous with everything, and they are there to challenge you and see what your mental resilience is like, and are you someone who can kind of fit in with the bigger team, right? So I would say in those circumstances, even if you feel like, oh, maybe this isn't for me, like that is what they're testing you for. They are seeing, can you get through those moments? The sense of personal growth, and just like meeting such like-minded people. And I've got some, without sounding too cliche or whatever, I've got some fab friends out of it. So it is all worth it in the end. Just persevere and know that you're being tested for a reason.
What's been one of your biggest challenges so far?
I think one of the biggest challenges I faced in my role as a troop commander was actually kind of my first few days at the regiment with my troop, because you're coming in and people know that you're new, you're fresh out of the Sandhurst factory essentially, and you want to have good first impressions. And there's a range of experience in the troop. You know, you've got people who have been serving for their first year, and then you've got people who've been close to 20 years. So coming in and trying to adjust to the kind of working patterns they've got already, and kind of integrating into that team, I think was probably one of my biggest concerns, because I never wanted to ruffle any feathers. So I think coming in, the mindset I kind of just went in with was, okay, well, I'm here to play my role, and they've all got their roles. And yes, the army has its sense of hierarchy, which is absolutely there for good reason. And, you know, everyone respects the hierarchy. However, my approach was, we are a troop, we are a team. You play your part, I'll play mine. And I've found so far that that's been working quite well.
Mm-hmm. And finally, I do have a question around the support that the army offer in terms of mental health. Is there something in place there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a larger push on this over recent years in comparison to when my mum went through in the 80s, for example, right? A lot of organisations, army included, has realised the importance of championing mental health. And we've got so many different support schemes, whether you speak to the Padre or the welfare team that we've got on site. You've got like anonymous organisations. We've always got kind of posters up and about where if people don't really want to speak with their own chain of command, which is encouraged, but sometimes people aren't comfortable with that, then there's means and ways of, you know, getting that support without people knowing, because everyone's circumstance is different, right? I would say, you know, going through, there's definitely been that kind of support structure, that network, and if you did need it, then you would kind of have broad selection to choose from. So yeah, I think it's been good.
Great. So what's next in your career?
So I've recently just found out my next posting. So as an officer, your postings tend to change about every 2 years, give or take. So my 2 years at my current regiment coming to an end, and I found out that I'm going to Purbright. So it's a training centre for phase 1 soldiers. So brand new, coming into the army and looking to start a career. I'm very excited about that. And again, super grateful to have been given such an opportunity. These people are at the start of their careers, and any influence I can have on them to kind of make their careers, or the start of their careers, a positive place, and have that perseverance through something that's quite challenging, perhaps the biggest challenge that you've ever faced. I'm really excited to be part of that journey. I'm conscious that, you know, I've been speaking about my personal kind of journey here myself, and I just want to say, obviously, these are my own opinions, apart from the facts on scholarships and bursaries. But if people did want to know more, then there's like YouTube blogs online, but also I think the best source is the Army website, because the information there and the videos are the most up to date and most factual.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
So thank you so much for having me here. I think it's so nice to be able to give representation on, again, it's my own personal opinions and experience, but to kind of broadcast these opportunities that the Army does have to offer, and essentially like not break the stigmas as such, but give further awareness. I'm really grateful for the opportunity, so thank you.
Thanks again to Sophie for their time. For more information on joining the Army, you can check out the show notes below. For a full-length video version of this episode, check out our YouTube channel at FutureUPod. If you enjoyed the episode, do feel free to leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Thank you, as always, for listening, and good luck on your journey to Future You.